So now that we're done with the washes, let's talk about pigments. So MIG was the first one to come out with pigments specifically for modeling. But since then, you have a lot of other groups coming out with pigments. Vallejo has a line. I don't have any, but AK Interactive has a line as well. Secret Weapon. There's a couple other ones. But basically, it's ground color. It's pretty much the same stuff that's in makeup that gives makeup its color. Of course, without the additives that turn it into lipstick or something like that. But it's a powder, and there's a few different ways to apply it. We'll go over a couple here. So you need your pigment. You need some odorless thinner. Oh, and that's the other thing I forgot to mention. Before these were created, people would actually use pastel chalks, and unfortunately I don't have any left to show you, but art supply stores you can get pastel chalks, and you need to get the pastels that are dry sticks, not the oil versions. And if you look around, there is a pack that exists that just has earth colors in them, and so try looking for that. But anyway, back to this. So a couple different ways to apply it. We're going to do this way here. I want to show you. Actually, let's start with the dark stuff. Let's take a dry brush, not your best brush, and you can just sprinkle it a little bit on the top. I don't want to go too much on this kit because this is a very small model, so I don't want a massive amount of dirt on this, what equivalently would be a very high hull. There's not going to be a lot of people crawling around on this thing. You could concentrate it more in the recesses or what have you, and just sprinkle it on. Actually, let's do a little bit of the light stuff too. There we go. I don't care too much about the application of exactly where it goes because this kind of changes it. Get yourself a pipette, or you can use a brush, and then we're just going to drop it on there. You can use water for this, but the odorless thinner makes it stick a little bit better. And it'll also help it flow into the recesses where dirt would normally collect. And so you can just use it like that. I'm going to break up some of these little chunks here. And the other way to do this is you can make a straight wash out of it. So let's put a little bit on my palette here. Again with the odorless thinner. I'm trying to thin this out a bit. There we go. And you can just use it as a wash and place it where you need. Just remember, it looks really dark right now, but when it dries, it's going to go back to whatever pigment shade you're using. Also, don't overdo it. I find it really easy to overdo this. But I do prefer the pipette version because it tends to dry a little bit more naturally, as you'll see eventually. Also, what I occasionally do is just put a few streaks along the side. It doesn't show up too well right now, but when it dries, it will. So I'll just do this a little bit longer, and then we'll go on to the next step. Still drying, however, I want to move on to the next part here, since on the next step we can take care of this all at the same time once everything is dry. But I want to work on the bottom now, and so we're going to create some mud, and I just put some dark earth pigments in here, and I added some artist gel, some regular gel medium, to thicken it up to make a paste to simulate mud. And they actually make products, each one of these MIGs and AK make products for this purpose. However, I find the acrylic gel works fine. You can also use things like spackle to make this. And So we want to create sort of a gel. This is a little thick due to the scale, excuse me, this is a little thin due to the scale of the kit. You can make it a lot thicker. You can also add gravel to this and, you know, bits of static grass to represent, you know, really caked on mud. I want this fairly thin though. So this is a mixture of the gel with a little bit of water, with the pigment, and also a little bit of Pledge with Future Shine, so it has a bit of a sheen like wet mud. Remember that wet mud is going to be dark, and dry mud is going to be a lot lighter. So again, because of the scale here, I don't want to put on a whole lot of this. So we're going to just put it on some of the recesses here. This is a bit thinner than you would normally do for mud, but it's perfect for this application here. Let's see if we get a little thicker bit here. There we go. And so we're just going to go around the tracks. On a larger scale kit, I mean, you want to concentrate inside the road wheels. Actually, I have one right here. So like on this one here, you want to concentrate putting all the pigments, you know, inside these areas where all this mud, all the mud would collect. It's a little bit different on this World War I behemoth. And then, once that's done, we're going to take another brush and then take some, let's take some dark brown here and just sprinkle it on top. And we can take some light stuff too to mix up different, you know, how wet the earth is and going through different colors of earth. Oops, flung a little bit there. And we're going with lighter colors because this is going to dry on top of the darker mud. So it gives you a good effect of, you know, lighter dry dirt on wetter, thicker mud. There we go. So now we just have to wait for everything to dry, and we'll move on to the next step. Once the pigment is dry, you can take a dry brush and just brush away the excess. Blow it away as necessary. And if you don't like, you know, how it ended up, you can always wipe most of it away. Just use some of that thinner or water, whatever you used previously, and try to clean up most of it. Most of it will come off. But you definitely want to remove the excess, at least. And once you put this stuff on, it's basically not permanent. It is a temporary thing. It means you can't touch the model, and you cannot spray any sort of lacquer over it, or it eats up most of the pigments. You can also use a Q-tip here, sort of thinning out the sides a bit. Now, I do have to apologize. This was not the best tank to show pigments on. Unfortunately, because of the camouflage and the fact that it's so small scale, I really couldn't do a whole lot here. And just as the nature of the vehicle, because this is a very slow moving World War I tank, it's not like it goes running through the mud, and so I didn't do too much on the tank. So just to give you another idea of some other pigment work I've done recently, excuse me. You can see a bit more of the pigment effects here. The problem is I built these for bolt action miniature game, so I did cover these with some Tester's dull coat because these are going to be handled and I needed to seal the pigments down. So the lacquer ate away a lot of the pigments, but you can see some of them there, and on this one as well. And you can see some of the variation, the slight variation on the tank. So there you have it. I do apologize. I know this is supposed to be an intro video, and I know this did not come out as well as I wanted it to. Again, I'm not an expert with pigments. I do play around with them, and most of the time it comes out pretty well. In this particular case, due to the scale and the nature of the vehicle, not so much. But the techniques are valid what I'm giving you here. There is a lot more you can do with pigments, and you could work with them a lot better. I would suggest searching a bit more online, because there are various ways to apply them, not just the way I'm doing it here, but they give you a good effect and can be done very effectively. This is fairly subtle. I mean, you can use them a lot more. You can use a lot more of the pigments to give a greater effect. Really thick caked on mud here. Just in this case, this is not my best work with pigments, and I would love to do it again, but that's not really going to happen. But that's about it. I think I'm going to add a little bit more down here because it's looking a little bit blotchy. But that is pretty much it. So let's just go to the final review. Okay, I did forget one thing, and it's usually my favorite step when model building. What I have here is some ground graphites, same stuff in pencils, and this is from graphite sticks that I ground down in a mortar and pestle. You can do fairly the same thing with just using a regular old pencil, but it's really good for adding a little metal sheen to like tracks and any areas where the crew would crawl around on the vehicle, rubbing away the paint and getting down to the bare metal. And I tend to overuse this stuff, but you can use like a Q-tip or something. I just use my finger, just dip a little bit in there. And now normally on this type of tank I would not be using this stuff because there's not going to be people crawling around on the top of this tank, which is 12-15 feet in the air or something like that. But I'm going to sacrifice realism just to show you how it works. And so I just rub it on the edges of the tank. And again, if this wasn't camouflaged, this would probably come out a little better. But you get a slight sheen and kind of darkens it like a worn, painted metal that's been worn away. And use a little bit of around the gun barrels for some soot blackening, and you can also do it on the tracks. And anywhere else. You would normally do this probably before your pigments. Normally I don't use a whole lot of pigments, and so it's not a real issue for me. I don't put the pigments all the way on the edges of a tank. But you can do it either or after it. I mean, it kind of depends on how much pigment you're using and where you're using it. But yeah, just a little rub on the edges here and there, on the guns, wherever. Again, not the ideal vehicle to use this technique on. But I really like it because it adds, I don't know, it just makes things pop, makes them look more realistic, I think. And I do tend to go overboard with this technique, I must admit. But anyway, with that, we're calling this one quits, so let's go to the review. And here we go, the model is completed, and just going over everything we did. Did the washes, very easy to use, the MIG washes. Following that, did some of the glazes. The glazes are a very subtle effect. You could somewhat see some streaking on the side, and that's basically what you want. You don't want like huge channels of rain marks. Normally you don't want that going down the side of your tank. The pigments, again, I apologize, not my best work with the pigments here. I'm trying to do a basic how-to video, and they didn't come out that great, and especially this is not the best vehicle to use them on due to the scale and the paint job. If you are just starting out on pigments, I would suggest getting the pastel chalk sets you can find in art stores, or getting, if I could interrupt here, getting these things I totally forgot about. I should have mentioned these earlier. These are weathering sticks from Tamiya, and they're kind of like, they're essentially lipstick. right there. So it's pigment and some sort of bonding agent, basically almost the same thing as lipstick. And you can just rub this on the vehicle and then take a moist brush to spread it out. Or what I usually do is put it on my palette and thin it out and make a wash out of it there. And it thins out a lot better into a wash than regular pigments. I just wish they came in more colors, because they only come in just a couple colors. So the mud and the light earth will get you pretty far on most things, and the limited selection is actually kind of beneficial if you're just starting out, since you just get these two. If you go and try to get pigments, most companies make 30 different colors of pigments, and it's a harder decision to make. But anyway, through all the little troubles and trials here, I hope this helped you out in beginning to build and paint your AFV models. And as always, thanks for watching.